Evening, good morning, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. You're welcome to join us. I see some names that came last time. Welcome back. And there's some newcomers as well. So this is the November session of the TM Editor Office Hour. I don't have any fixed agenda. Basically, I'm here to answer any question that you may have about tourism management or anything else that you would like to find out. So if anyone has any question, feel free to turn on your mic or turn on your camera, however you feel comfortable. Or you can type in the chat box if you have any question that you would like to put that in writing as well. We have a question in the chat box asking about the word limit of 3,000. I suppose that means the research notes or the current issues. By the way, we're merging the research notes and current issues category under one. And there's 3,000 words. Actually, tourism management is quite flexible. We provide a guideline for full article to about 10,000, and then the short research notes or short communication to about 3,000. But we're not that straight at the first submission. So yeah, you could count the references. You could not count the references. We will not cut you off if you go over by, let's say, 300, 400 words. That's fine. But if you go over by too much, then we may ask you to trim down a little bit. And same for full article as well. We say approximately 10,000. If you are 10,005 or even 11,000, usually we're quite flexible. It doesn't mean that you should repeat things or you should say things in a way that's not succinct. We still would like to provide the readers with a succinct story for every article that we publish. But if you go over a certain number, say if you go over 12,000 or 13,000 for full articles, then very likely we will ask you to trim it down a little bit, because when it gets too long, people are not likely to read your paper. And we want people to read your paper and get some interesting information out of it. So although tourism management is not very strict on word count, it is still a good advice to authors to tell a succinct story, and that takes practice. So anybody can tell a long story, but when you tell a long story, then people get lost in your writing. So try to be as succinct as possible. The question is, do I have some good questions on how to find good research question? Good research question usually come from a real life problem. So I would suggest you keep your eyes and ears open when you travel, when you walk on the street, when you shop, when you eat. If you see any real life issues that need to be addressed, then that should be a very interesting research question. One of my colleagues was sharing that she's more in the food and beverage area, and then she said she got this great idea simply because her friends having some health issues and they need a particular type of food or avoid a particular type of food, so she came up with some research ideas. So I guess anything happen in our environment, how people react, how people treat each other. For example, I had a research project that I did a few years ago, and that idea came from actually when I was shopping, and I noticed that depends on the language that I use in the store, people would treat me differently, and that inspired me to look at stereotype. So I did a study on stereotype. Simply because I feel like, okay, if I speak English, then people treat me one way. If I speak Chinese, people treat me another way. If I speak Cantonese, then people treat me in a third different way. So I thought that was very interesting. So I wanted to look at how people perceive tourists when they speak different languages, or when they assume they come from different parts of the world. So I guess keep your eyes and ears open to see what's happening around you, any particular pain points that you see, whether by yourself or by others, and then that could generate some very helpful, not only to the consumer, but also to the tourism suppliers as well, because we all want to make sure that tourists enjoy themselves, and then the tourism operators provide the best services that they can. So if you can find some real life problems, then that would be somewhere to start, I guess. But then my answer is biased based on my own discipline background. If you talk to economists, if you talk to public policy researchers, or if you talk to some people from the sociology perspective or human resources perspective, they may tell you differently. The next question is, does TM mainly publish papers on qualitative or quantitative research methods? Actually, we don't have any preference. In the next volume 101 of tourism management, actually, I will have an editorial about that particular question. That is a very often asked question. Do we have any preference for methods? Actually, we don't. You may find some people may have the perception that TM publishes more quantitative articles. That's not by choice. That's simply based on the number of quantitative research submitted. So I guess in the world, probably more tourism researchers are doing quantitative studies. Therefore, we get more submissions using quantitative studies. However, we do very much welcome qualitative studies. And more we see mixed method research. And that's, again, a very good way to triangulate the study results, looking at things from different perspectives. So I don't think research should be driven by methods. Research should be driven by the question that we want to solve, the theoretical background supporting the investigation, and then you find the most appropriate research method. So don't decide on the research method before you come up with the question and before you come up with the perspective that you want to take to conduct research. The next question is about literature review. Does tourism management still accept systematic narrative literature review? Yes and no. We don't take bibliometric study and we don't take systematic literature review. What we do have is, if you take a look at previous volumes of tourism management, there are some publications under the heading of progress in tourism research or progress in tourism. So if you look up the title progress, then you may see some review type of articles, but those are not pure bibliometric or systematic review. Rather, we're looking at narrative review. We're looking at more critical reflection on a theoretical basis. So we want to identify what have been done in the past, for example, 10 years, if that's the time horizon you're looking at, what have been done and what's missing, and what is the current critical issues, and then what do you suggest as the future investigation. So it doesn't have to be a comprehensive systematic literature review, but we're looking at that particular topic. We want to know what have been done, what is the current state, what is the gap, and then how do you proceed to the future. Again, we're looking at more from the theoretical perspective rather than a specific empirical study. So yeah, if you're interested, take a look at the past articles under the progress category. It is a very difficult category to write, I have to say, because you need to take an overall macro view, need to have a very strong theoretical foundation in that particular topic. Rather, comparing to systematic literature review is quite mechanic, right? So you count how many papers and you categorize them into the 10 different topics. You look at the methodology, you look at the country, and you do a summary. But for the progress, really it takes more on a theoretical, philosophical, reflective approach to guide the scholarship community on the future development of this particular topic areas that you're looking at. So yeah, it is quite difficult to write. Recently I heard from my colleague saying that, oh, I want to do it, and then he went ahead and did it, and then afterwards he said, boy, it takes a lot more comparing to an empirical study, because for empirical study, for my colleague who is very efficient, he said he just designed a study, go out, collect the data, report the results, and that's it. But for a progress type of review paper, it really does a lot of soul searching and a lot of thinking, reflection, and come up with needs to come up with very substantive arguments and ideas. The next question is, can I recommend some good quantitative books? For example, how to write a good quantitative paper through that book? Oh, that's a tough one. I don't have any book recommendation. In the past, we all just go through the basic research method classes, and there are tons of books out there. And then we will, well, quantitative really, it's not one method, isn't it? Quantitative, there are a lot of, you can look at the statistical analysis, you can look at big data and analytics, now even with artificial intelligence. So I don't think there is one book. I guess the best advice is you look at some of the previously published articles to look at how they conducted their study. And of course, if you're very specific about a particular quantitative method, then you can search for a book that specializes on that particular method. Sorry, I couldn't answer this question any better than that.
Hello, Professor. Excuse me, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Thank you. Actually, my name is Sada Farahani. I'm studying tourism management at Sichuan University in Chinese, and 8 months later, I will graduate. I'm really interested in continuing my PhD in the field of tourism management in Australia or Canada to receive the scholarship, the full scholarship for PhD, and continue my studies. I would really appreciate it if you give me any advice, if you have, or any idea that it would be able to make my path to PhD more smooth, and help me to increase the percentage of my accepting in high ranked universities in Australia or Canada. Thank you so much.
It is quite competitive, isn't it? Especially if you're looking at full scholarship. So I would suppose if you have any conference presentations, conference papers, involving any professor's research project, and I don't know if you have any journal articles published. I guess anything to demonstrate your ability, not only the potential, but ability. Potential is kind of difficult to judge, isn't it? If you have a very high, for example, GMAT score, GRE score, or TOEFL or IELTS, those gonna help. But there are other people who have high scores as well. So if there's any evidence that you can provide, that would certainly be very helpful. And if there is any particular professor that you're interested in working with, it doesn't hurt to contact them, just to introduce yourself so that they know you. I guess knowing the candidate is really important. It's difficult to judge the quality on paper. That's why we're having this hour on a monthly basis, because it doesn't matter how many emails I write, how many announcements that I make. You may misinterpret them. You may not know what I mean. So talking, or knowing people, I think that's really important.
Oh, thank you so much. For like right now, I'm working on publishing a paper, and at the same time, working on my graduation thesis. But in your idea, because of course, you're very well experienced. I would love to use your experience about this. For PhD, do you think how many papers should I have in my resume? How many published papers can help to receive the PhD, the PhD scholarship more smoothly?
Well, different universities use different criteria, so I can't really give you a number. The more the merrier, obviously, but then you have limited time and resources. So I would say at least one. And then if you can participate in a couple of conferences, doing presentations, I mean, show efforts. In addition to performance evidence, show efforts, and that will help as well. So
Thank you so much. Thank you.
you're welcome. Hi, Daisy.
Hello, Professor Xu and everyone. Just a license, like turn on my camera. So just say hi and it's a social section, I believe. But I can add on the question I think Sadat just asked. For example, when you before you apply for the PhD, what may contribute or can be some credits for your proposal to be considered? Yeah, publication is a good one if you can. And I think, yeah, I benefit from publishing in my master degree with my supervisor, Professor Xu. So I think that will make your CV looks better. At least it shows you already know the progress of doing a research. Another thing I think is that when you submit your proposal in a PhD application, I think potential supervisors may also take a look on that, especially your background is not that relevant to tourism or hospitality. We may look at your details. And if you can provide a good understanding about the background, about the methodology, I think that could also help. It shows you make some efforts, you know what you are going to do in this way. I think that's a little bit of tips.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much. I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Daisy. Mohammed, you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. I'm Mohammed Shoaib Khalik, and I'm currently studying in International Silk Road University of Tourism and Cultural Heritage, Uzbekistan. Basically, I'm from Pakistan, and from the past 8 years, I'm only studying research methods and the philosophies related to the research methods and the paradigms. And as far I haven't written any research paper till now, because I am a little afraid of writing that kind of research, which will not contribute to the body of knowledge, basically. And it will be not more near to the science. Actually, what I want to do is to write near to the science, nearest to the science, and it should be somehow critical in terms of my research. So my question is that, I want to ask a question that I'm writing a research paper. I mean that most of the researchers currently ask that and use the phrases that we will write 5 papers in a year or 10 papers in a year. I mean that you should clarify this as well, that most of the number of papers is not important, that philosophies are important. We should dig into the philosophies, for example, postmodernism and objectivity and other philosophies. This is what I understand. Mostly teachers, I already studied in Dongbu University of Finance and Economics, and teachers mostly focus on in the tourism academia, focus on basically the practical methods of doing research. I mean the platforms or the softwares we use to analyze our data, but they don't focus on the philosophies from where the every thought is coming from. And nowadays I see papers on on top journals, after reading philosophy for eight years and various books in philosophy and many paradigms, I observed that most of the papers are not following the criterias of science and research, basically, in most of the journals, in the top journals as well. So I want you to shed light on this as well. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. That's a very good question. I think, well, it's a tough question. A lot of depending on which journal you're talking about, even the top journal, they have different positioning. Tourism management is a management journal, whereas if you look at another journal that could have a very much social science focus. So then the type of paper published in these two journals will be very different. So a management focused journal tend to be empirical in nature, meaning tourism management, we don't really publish conceptual papers. Conceptual papers tend to be more on the philosophical side, to look at things, develop a concept, proposing a framework. So those type of paper will have more of a philosophical discussion as one aspect of it. So tourism management is a management journal, therefore, all the studies or most of the studies that we publish needs to have empirical data, and limited by the word allowed. As I mentioned earlier, you need to tell a succinct story. So usually, especially for quantitative study, the authors don't really have the room to reflect, to talk about the philosophy. And actually, if you think broadly, theory is the philosophical aspect of it. So we do ask the authors to identify the development of theoretical aspect in a particular topic. What are the shortcomings? Do a critical review of that. What are the gaps? How can this particular empirical piece improve or expand or refine the theory of that area? I guess that's the philosophical part of it, even though they may not use the term that you used earlier. So when we look at a PhD thesis, then when I serve as the examiner, I often ask the question, where is you're getting a PhD, means Doctor of Philosophy, where is the philosophical aspect of that? So very often in a PhD thesis, we will ask specific writing about that, but in the journal article, which is very condensed, then it's more difficult to do that. So it is not an indication that it's not important, but simply because the limited number of words allowed in a journal article. For the quantitative study, however, we tend to see more discussion from a philosophical perspective. Probably that's just because of the different paradigm, different approaches of doing things. But I think you raised a very good question, and we all need to think back and look at, take a step back and think, what is that philosophical or theoretical aspect of it, and how can our research be elevated to more of a theoretical level, meaning at least having theoretical guidance and then trying to advance the knowledge. So I don't think I answered that question completely, but I understand what you're saying, and it is an important consideration.
Yes, ma'am. Let me add something to it. Actually, for example, postmodernism, the paradigm of postmodernism is highly educated in today's world, but the objective philosophers and other philosophers have make many critiques about it, that it's a reactionary philosophy to the philosophy of Enlightenment and the Enlightenment era. And I see many papers, they are written in the paradigm of postmodernism, and it creates many conclusions, and on basis of that conclusion we do practical implications for our industry as well. And sometimes, for example, I'm from a critical school of thought person, and from Frankfurt School. So what I believe that I believe, and I have read some papers regarding postmodernism, that they don't even know what they are trying to say. So many papers are written in postmodernism, and top journals like Annals of Tourism Research and other journals, they publish those papers which are written on that specific paradigm And currently, due to lack of data and evidence in modernist philosophy, there is another philosophy which came meta postmodernism or modernism, which incorporated objectivity as well, ma'am. You know better than me about it. But as far I think that many journals are accepting such papers which are using some kind of outdated philosophies or the rejected philosophies as well in the scientific paradigm or social sciences scientific paradigms.
Mm.
So please shed light on this as well, that many journals are publishing on postmodernist authenticity of tourism, for example, and it says nothing about the objective truth or reality. It gives it gives no sense to it. For example, I was reading a paper published in 2023 July, and it was a postmodernist approach, and they had no conclusions about the tourism authenticity. It was deteriorating the objective reality. So it means that, for example, the postmodernists are those people, they don't believe in science and objective reality, and thus they are publishing in scientific journals as well. I call this that they are publishing, they are doing prayers in Mecca, but having no belief in Islam. So this is like that. So what your stance on publishing such papers in academic journals which have the outdated philosophy, or the philosophy which is no longer can be applied in the science other social sciences disciplines, or have less evidence in our society?
Mm. Well, thank you for sharing. I certainly don't know much about, probably I don't know as much as you do. We do rely on reviewers. I mean, admittedly, my research area is very much focused on consumer behaviors and, limited areas. Now, recently, I'm looking at more tourist host interaction from the disciplinary focus of psychology and a little bit on social psychology. So I very much rely on reviewers to make the decision, to make the recommendation of a final decision. And we have editorial board members in different specialty areas. Therefore, I'm not the only one who handle the process. And when I see a paper that I have no knowledge of, I will forward that to associate editor who is the disciplinary expert in that area, and that person will go out to search for reviewers who are in the respective area. So we rely on our network of reviewers, researchers, scholars to collectively make that decision. Is the decision perfect? No, it's not. Can I confidently say 100% of the papers published in the journal has no error? No, I cannot say that, but that's the best we can do. We try our best to make the best decision, to let the best paper published, to let the paper submitted become the best possible before it gets published. That's all we can do, and we try our best to do that. And there are many journals do have that critical, or different journals name that differently. They sometimes publish commentary about any previous publications. So if you find a journal that has a space for it, and if you feel the need to critically review a previously published paper, you can certainly do that. So I guess not many people are thinking about that, and with more and more people getting their terminal degree, the PhD, the doctorate degree from the tourism discipline, meaning generic tourism discipline, including myself, who don't have a separate disciplinary background, it is tough for people like me to think of the more on a theoretical or philosophical basis, but we try.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your answer. And I'm an applicant for your university next year.
All right. Thank you.
For a PhD degree. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
The next question: what is the current average time from submission to acceptance of a paper of TM? It depends on how many iterations it goes through. Usually when the paper is submitted, it will go to our editorial assistant who will check the formality. If there are some things that needs to be revised, she will send it back to the authors who make the revision usually very quickly. And then it will go through our managing editor who usually will take a first desk review within 1 week, and the paper will come to me, and I usually do the second layer of desk review in 1 week, and then I will invite reviewers. I will send it out to associate editors, and then they send it out to reviewers. We get 3 reviewers to review each paper, and we give the reviewer 1 month to do it, but not all of them return within the time specified. So if you add everything together from submission to the outcome of the first review, provided or assuming that the paper is not desk rejected, if the paper is desk rejected, then the authors usually hear from us within 2 weeks. If it goes out to the reviewers, then that's 2 weeks plus the 1 week that we allow reviewers to accept or decline the invitation, and then 4 more weeks to do the review if they return their review on time. So now we are looking at 2 months past, then a decision is made. Usually it's a revision, whether it's a minor revision or major revision, then we will send it back to the author. It's up to the authors to return the revision in a timely manner. So you may take 1 month, 2 months, 3 months to do the revision, and then we will go through that process again. So it's difficult to say, but there are some statistics available on the journal website. You can take a look. I think the average review time or first decision time is available on the website. So it really varies depending on from paper to paper. As you know, every journal requires theoretical contribution. I wonder what is good theoretical contribution for the journal tourism management. Does editor have some criteria to judge what is good theoretical contribution to TM? So I kind of mentioned that we rely a lot on the reviewers. The reviewers are the experts in the area of the paper submitted. Then they really are tough. Sometimes they're tougher than the editors. So they will tell us whether this particular piece make any theoretical contribution. I guess as an author, for myself, me as an author, I usually review the literature to see what are the current development of the different theories in this particular area. If I find a particular theory that I think is suitable, can guide the study, then I will look at but what is missing in that particular theory? Can I add anything to it by using my study? For example, I will conduct a study, collect the data with empirical evidence to help enhance that theory or expand that theory, or to make that theory even more reliable or universal. So anything that you can demonstrate that after you conducted the study, the theory becomes stronger. The thing that we see that very often that reviewers don't let the paper get accepted is a number of theories are mentioned at the beginning of the paper to justify your hypotheses. If this is a quantitative study, different hypotheses are supported by different theories, but then at the end you only report the results, the empirical results, and don't really go back to the theories that you mentioned earlier and discuss how are these theories better because of the particular study conducted. It's kind of hard to answer in a short period of time, but really are the theories become better simply because you have conducted the study, or are you just providing something and saying, yes, the finding is consistent with the previous study or different from the previous study? And those are the purely empirical contribution rather than theoretical contributions. So I guess go back to the literature and identify if you find a theory and then say, I don't think the theory is right, or I don't think the theory is completely applicable in this particular situation, then you can think about how can you make that better. So I hope that answered at least part of the question.
Hello, Professor Xu.
Hi.
I'm Kaidi. Hello, I'm Kaidi from Bournemouth. So I have two questions today. So the first is from the editor's perspective, what is a good paper title? Because sometimes when I read a paper, they have a quite long title. The first sentence is like, what you see and what you see is what you get, and then follow a research topic. And some paper from like TM or the AMG or AMR, they keep very short title. And some scholars also suggest me that if you want a good title, just combine some keywords which can help the researchers to easier to start to get your research from the search engine. So what's your perspective? This is the first question. And the second question is, do you have any suggestions about how to make the paper more storytelling? Because when I read the paper from the Financial Times 50, those journal papers, they are very short, just like 8 pages or 10 pages. So I know for me, I still need to practice, but I want to know some tips that I can like make more progress and write the manuscript better and better. Thank you.
Well, those are very good questions. Title, it's always a struggle, isn't it? You want to come up with a title that sounds really interesting and fascinating, yet you don't want to disappoint the readers. You don't want to have too catchy of a title and then you cannot deliver. I know some journals limit the number of words or limit number of characters that you can have in a title. Tourism management doesn't have, well, we have that, but we have a very, very high limit. So sometimes you see quite a lengthy title, although lengthy titles are not recommended. Short, catchy, reflect the content. A lot of people do a 2-part title. Something, comma, and then something else, or a question mark and then something else, right? I guess it's a matter of personal preference. Actually, if you are good at writing, you don't need a 2-part question. Very often I see that as an easy way out because you cannot come up with a very interesting 1-sentence title, therefore you break that into 2 parts. That seems to be a bit easier. But too short is not good either. I've seen a recent submission has a very short title, and the reviewers all comment that the title is too general. People would not even pick up. People would not even come and read your article because it's too generic. So anything you think, 1 or 2 things that you think this study really are different from the others. What are so different about this paper from the others? That's, it doesn't have to be the variable names. Very often we see people put variable names there, moderator name, mediator name, or, you don't have to do that. So I would say limit your title to, I would say 5 to 12 words. That's just out of my head. You don't want too long a title. You don't want too short a title, but you want to set up people's expectation. Because you mentioned keywords. Keywords can help people search, right, to reach your article. So and when they do the search, that either the title will work or either the title or the keywords will work. So if you have very good descriptive keywords, then I think your title could be telling the bigger story rather than the specific particular variables. So I guess there is no perfect answer, sorry. How do you tell a story? I guess it has to do with how did you come up with the research idea. Going back to having a real life problem probably can help you tell the story. Why should people pay attention to this particular piece of research? What problem can you solve? To start from there, that would help, I think, telling a story. And story needs to have a central storyline. Another piece of critical comments we often receive from reviewer is they're too many different pieces going to different directions. There's no central backbone or central storyline that is consistent from the beginning to the end. So stick with a story. Don't try to tell too many little stories along the way. Sometimes authors may think, oh, is that enough? Is that interesting enough? Is that enough? Should I add more? But actually, simple. Keep it simple. Just what is the main problem? What are you trying to tell the reader? And keep coming back to this. Recently, we have a visiting professor with us, and he used the word consistency. Consistency from the beginning to the end. What are you trying to do, right? What is the research question? What is the problem you're trying to solve? What are the objectives? And even the research method needs to be consistent with the question, with the objectives, and then you go through the findings. Stay with that central idea, right? And sometimes we see, especially with students' thesis, they will say, oh, I can do additional analysis on this, I can do additional analysis on that, and then they put everything together. But then I say, don't do that. Is that part of your objective? If it's not, don't do it. You don't have to do it, right? So don't feel like you have to do more and more and more, but you need to stay with that central storyline, right? Just like when we go to a party, some people are very good at storytelling, but you really think about it, their stories are very simple. They have one central focus. That focus keep you interested. And sometimes we will hear people say, I have no idea what he's talking about. And that's because there are too many points in that particular conversation. So I would say keep it simple, and you don't have to, it's not a competition of who has more stories in one article, right? Now we see a lot of study 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I'm seeing 6 studies in one article. Right, it seems like becoming a competition who can report more stuff in the article, and that is not the point. The point is, can you tell one story really well, right? Yeah, it does take practice. I'm still learning, so.
Thank you so much, Professor.
The question is, what is quality in research in the context of asking a deep, baffling question? How quality of a question is defined in tourism management? We don't judge whether a question is a good question or a bad question. It's how you justify, how you rationalize. This is a question that's worthy of investigation. It's the author who needs to defend. If you can tell me, why are you studying this topic? If there is a need that you can demonstrate, then it's a good question. It's not for us to judge whether this is a good question and worthy of investigation or not. It's the authors. Again, it goes back to, if you find somebody having a problem, that's a good question, right? You want to solve either an individual problem, a business problem, a society problem, a policy problem, then it's a real problem, then it's a good question. But then you have to argue for why it is a question worthy of solving. Some questions are just, hey, how are you today? It is a question, but I say fine, then that's the end of it, right? So if you can really define, if you can really justify why it is a question, why it is important in real life, and why is it important if you're looking at the theoretical aspect, why is it important to improve a particular theory, what's the shortcoming of that theory, and as long as you can justify, then that's a good question. So we don't have a definition. It's up to the authors to tell us why it is a good question to solve.